Hope you guys had a good weekend, had a good Sunday. Hopefully you had a good Valentine's Day. I know I did. I spent the evening last night with the girl I'm seeing here in London. We had a very nice dinner in West London, and then we came back to mine and just had a nice fun night. And then this morning we stayed in and had some coffee and some croissants since she is French. And we watched like an old school 2008 WWE Royal Rumble. Yes, very random, but it was very funny. And yeah, that was really funny actually. Just watching wrestling as a grown man and seeing how ridiculously scripted it was. But either way, it was really enjoyable. So shout out to John Cena. You can't see me. But yeah, that was quite fun to watch with her. But yeah, obviously today, fairly chill day. Obviously preparing for the upcoming immersion that I have with my client, who I shall name as Kevin, as his alias. But yeah, I'll be coaching Kevin in, well, next weekend basically. Um, and so looking forward to that. So if you're watching, Kevin, I hope you're ready, locked and loaded to start shooting your shot. But yeah, should be fun. Otherwise, yeah, let's get straight into the topic. I mean, as you can see by the title, we're talking about growth, but specifically, I think I've titled this one if it feels like annihilation, but it's actually growth. So this was inspired by a video essay that I came across on YouTube a few days ago, and in it there was this amazing line, which is the title of this live stream. So I immediately paused the video, jotted it down, and put it in my notes app because I knew that at some point I would like to talk about this in a live stream within the context of cold approach because it's so relevant to the emotional experiences you have with cold approach, right? So in the video, annihilation was basically in relation to any sort of intense feeling, right? And it was talking about how when you're reclaiming a new identity, or rather when you're building a new identity, it can be very fearful, right? It can be very fearful. It can be nerve wracking because you're not used to being in that vulnerable position. So it can almost feel like annihilation, right? Because you're in this uncharted territory. And I've spoken about it before, where in cold approach, especially when you go in for your first approach, you feel that intensity, you feel that approach anxiety, you feel the increased heart rate, the sweaty palms, the restricted chest or the tighter chest, the restricted throat, and maybe it even feels like the world is closing in, right? And it can be very scary. It's a very, fairly frightening experience, especially for the uninitiated, right? If you haven't done one before, then it can be very nerve-wracking just physically, right? And I think annihilation is a beautiful, accurate term to describe it because it does feel like you're being annihilated in a sense, right? It almost feels like your world is being annihilated, like you're being almost, it's all coming and crashing down rather. So I think annihilation is a great way to describe it with just one word. And of course, that's a intense, let's say, negative feeling because it doesn't feel good, right? It doesn't feel bubbly. It's not like the opposite of that, which would be utopia or euphoria, right? Or joy or peace, right? It feels like everything's going at a million miles an hour. It's very uncomfortable. So, of course, when we feel those feelings, right, before an approach, let's say, it can be very scary, and we almost want to avoid it, right? We sense that feeling and we get that emotional intensity, and then alarm bells start ringing, right? We kind of go into that flight or fight or paralyzed mindset, right? And we take that signal as a sign that we shouldn't go forward, right? Because what does that signal suggest? It suggests that whatever it is in front of us that we want to do, dangerous. There is a danger, right? And so if there's danger, then we are at risk of being annihilated, right? Now, obviously, in the context of code approach, we're obviously not in danger of literally being annihilated. I mean, it's not like we're approaching a wild, vicious lion in the jungle, which could tear our face off. Mate, we're just approaching a cute girl at the bus stop. It's not that big of a deal. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. But of course, it feels like a big deal. And I'm not here to undermine that feeling because that feeling is real. It feels real. So, but ultimately, it feels like there is danger ahead. And so if there's danger, then I mean it's pretty rational, pretty logical to avoid danger, right? I mean we've all grown up being told don't touch this, don't go too close to that edge, don't go too high on that jumping frame, don't go too hard here, take it easy, don't take too many risks because there's danger, right? And of course, using our common sense, we know that there are certain physical dangers that could actually harm us physically. But the kind of danger that we're talking about here with cold approach isn't physical. It's just emotional, right? It's a danger to our sense of self-worth. It's a danger to our well-being, our emotional well-being. The danger is my ego will get hit, right? And it'll turn out that I'm not the cool, suave, smooth guy that I think I am or that I try to portray by the clothes I wear or the car I drive or the job I have or the accolades that I've acquired or the respect I have from my community. All that shit goes out the window, right? When you get rejected, and that's all put on the line. So you realize that the danger is that that entire identity, that entire ego is at jeopardy, right? And that's why we are afraid to push into that danger, which in this case is literally just a girl standing at a bus stop, which is so funny to say because it feels like the end of the world. Because think about it, most men will never go an entire lifetime without ever approaching anybody, even if they've had the desire to do so dozens of times. And it's because of that fear that I'm describing. But you'd make it, it seems that the way I'm describing it, it seems like we're about to jump off the Empire State Building. It's ridiculous, right? But we're not. So either way, like I said, I'm not undermining the fear because the fear is real. It's a real physiological fear. But once we acknowledge this, then we have to understand that even though the initial reaction is, oh, this is scary, therefore I shouldn't do it because my ego is at jeopardy or at risk, the correct reframe, if you actually want to get good at this skill and see results, is to think about it in a different way, which is this feels dangerous, therefore I will actually go head first into it, right? So instead of taking the danger as a signal to escape or to avoid, we take it as a signal to go in, right? And why do we do that? Because we recognize that by going in and facing that danger, there is growth on the other side, right? And the growth is, it doesn't feel like it in the moment, and it feels like a mile away because your main concern right now is that sense of danger, right? That annihilation that's going through your body, your nerves, your blood, your veins. But if you have the right mentality and the right mindset and you're going into this with the, not just being led by your emotions and your feelings, but seeing the bigger picture, which I like to call almost the God level perspective, then you see the growth in tackling your fears, right? By accepting and even welcoming that annihilation, you understand that there's growth. And what is that growth? Well, think about it. Once you've gotten over the fear once and you realize you're alive, then now you've essentially become somebody who's able to attack his fears, right? So before you did the approach, you were somebody who was scared, somebody who was controlled by his fears, somebody who was controlled by his negative emotion. Then you do the approach and then you survive. So one, you realize, oh, I survived. It wasn't too bad. And then secondly, you realize, oh, I am the kind of guy who can actually go after what I want, even if it's scary, even if my ego's on the line. And if I can do it once, then I can probably do it twice. And if I can do it twice, then I can probably do it 10 times. And now you have this momentum, right? And the momentum is the growth, because one approach becomes two, two becomes three, three eventually becomes 10. And if you're consistent and you always keep in mind that this is a growth process, then 10 becomes 100. And once you've done 100, you're a completely different person. Trust me, once you've done 100 approaches, you become a different person. And not just a different person because you've either gotten dates or maybe you've gotten a few numbers. No, no, no. You become a different person because you've just faced your fear 100 times. How many people do you know who have actually faced a fear 100 times in a fairly condensed period of time? Not many people. That's why I love Cold Approach, because I don't think there are many disciplines that actually force you to confront your fears, especially fears that are so tied to your ego, to your sense of identity. This isn't the same kind of fear as, let's say, jumping out of a plane, right? That is a certain sense of fear, right? I'll give you an example of my own personal life. I play the drums and I learnt the drums in high school, and I was pretty good early on. And my drum teacher pushed me to perform in front of the school, even though I didn't want to do it. And I was afraid, right? I didn't want to do it because I was scared that I might mess up my song, and therefore I would, be embarrassed, and I felt like I wasn't ready. But he believed in me, and so he pushed me into it, and I did it, and I came out the other end intact, and it went well, and I actually became almost addicted to performing. I loved it. I performed every week. I joined a band. I started playing for the school, like the school theater orchestra. So I did percussion for all the different plays that we did. So it's funny how I was afraid at first, and then I faced that fear. Although in that case, I had to be nudged by my teacher, which is why having a coach is important. And then I eventually got over that fear, and then the momentum just took care of itself, and I started getting positive reinforcement. And instead of running away from the fear, I almost integrated it, accepted it, and essentially just put it in the back of my mind, because it was no longer a a barrier, right? But at the same time, that's playing the drums, right? So playing the drums, I don't think I necessarily attached my entire sense of self-worth, or my fuckability, or my attractiveness as a man, or my masculinity, or my ability to procreate. I didn't put that into whether or not people liked the way I played the drums, right? Whereas with Cold Approach, it's like you're really putting yourself out there for the girl to reject, for people to see the girl reject you. Like it takes a lot more from you. So that's why when you face this kind of fear, it's a very different ball game. I think the closest thing to it is probably like stand-up comedy, right? If you're performing in front of a crowd and you're, you know, putting material out that you've written yourself, then that's more vulnerable, right? Because you're putting out your jokes, and it's almost a sense of your identity, and you're also talking, right? Because with the drum kit, I could kind of hide behind the drum kit, right? It's just Ian playing the drums. But with stand up, you're actually performing in front of a crowd. And just like with Cold Approach, it's you. It's not a version. I mean, to be fair, maybe at the start, if you're early on, you might be putting on a performance, or putting on like a false persona because you're afraid of being your authentic self. But eventually, you're just putting yourself out there, right? So there is no hiding, there is no mask, there is no performance, there is no prop to hide behind. It is you, your fully embodied self, in front of that girl and in front of those strangers or bystanders. And that is nerve wracking, right? And so it demands something different. It demands a different level of courage and bravery. But like I said, when you do it, you gain that courage, right? You gain that bravery, and you cultivate it with every single approach. And eventually you just become different, and you grow and you grow and you grow. So this one is specifically, or this live stream is and message is specifically geared towards, guys who haven't done their first approach and are overwhelmed with that anxiety, that fear, which is very real. We've all felt it. I don't think anybody who's found success with this skill has had, been able to skip that initial process of confronting the fear. The fear is always there. So, it's not a odd feeling. Many people have felt it. I have felt it. So it's not a case of, not having the fear. It's just a case of being able to get past it. Because a lot of people will ask questions like, how do I reduce my approach anxiety? Or, how can I not be afraid before the approach? And the answer is that's not possible. The fear is part of the process. It's not that we're trying to eradicate the fear before approaching. We eradicate the fear by approaching, right? We eradicate the fear by putting ourselves in that scenario every single time. Repetition, repetition, exposure therapy. And then you become desensitized. And then it becomes a piece of cake. So it's funny because somebody left a comment on one of my videos and said, Ian, you're a natural. There's no way you used to struggle with this. And it's so funny seeing that comment because maybe, I don't know, maybe I do come across as a natural in the infield. But man, I wish I had a camera pointed at me when I did my first approach because I was bricking it. I was scared. I mean, it went fairly well because I actually managed to have a conversation with her. She was just stood still, to be fair. It wasn't like a, let's say more traditional walking and then stop in front of the girl type of approach. But to be fair, it went well, right? I got her number. We actually ended up talking on text. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see each other because she was leaving the country. But I was nervous, so nervous. I mean, I must have been speaking at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I must have had a really high pitched open. God knows what I sounded like, but I can assure you it was nothing like how I sound now, especially when I have a good approach or when I'm feeling more confident and in a good mood. So, and that was the result of just facing that fear, right? Because the more you face it, the more you're familiar with it, and then you realize, oh, I feel the butterflies in my stomach, but I'll be okay. And so you'll get to that point eventually if you just stick at it long enough. So that's my message to you boys. Keep on approaching, face that annihilation. It's really just, it's the destruction of an old version of yourself, right? The version of yourself that's afraid, the version of yourself that is, not used to expressing his desires, the version of you that cares too much about what people think. That's the version of you that's afraid, and that's the version of you that's being annihilated. And the version that comes out is a rebirthed version of you, right? It's a rebirthed version, right? This is actually a process of rebirth, if I really think about it. Like a new identity is being formed every time you face that fear. So if you view it like that, then now it's a bit more manageable, and you'll see the bigger picture. Because I think having that understanding of the bigger picture is what allows you to really gain confidence in the skill set, because it's not necessarily an overnight fix. In fact, it isn't, right? Anybody expecting quick results, this isn't for you, right? You need to understand that it's a process. Some people get results faster than others, but in general, you have to be consistent with putting in the action and facing the fear again and again and again. So, good luck, and yeah, just keep on breaking down that iceberg of fear, chipping away at that block of ice, one piece at a time, right? But otherwise, that's it. Final live stream of the week. Yeah, big week ahead. I've also got another call with my other client tomorrow. We'll call him Giacomo. That will be his alias. So shout out to Giacomo as well, who I'll be coaching in Italia. That'll be fun. Looking forward to that one as well. But yeah, otherwise, take care, boys. And I will do another live stream tomorrow. You ask what the topic will be. What will the topic be, Ian? I ain't telling you. To be honest with you, I don't know. I have a bunch of topics. I just write down topics on my notes app, so I'll just pick the one that I feel most passionate about, and the one that I think will be of most benefit to you boys as well. So either way, have a good night. See you tomorrow. Peace.